The smell of wet clay mixed with the distant sound of ocean waves filled my small but cozy pottery studio, nestled on a cobbled street in the coastal town of Maine. As if nature itself was harmonizing with my creations. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the large window, shining on the porcelain vases. I had meticulously shaped each one like a story of patience and love, reflecting a golden-orange glow, like dreams forged in fire. I, Lila, 40 years old, stood behind the pottery wheel, hands covered in clay, smiling at a group of students learning how to mold porcelain cups, feeling the simple joy of watching them discover the beauty of clay. In that moment, the studio was a place where children laughed, while shaping clay where couples picked out dish sets for their new homes, where I had built a life from the days when I had only an old kiln, like a piece crafted from cracks and perseverance. But on a Saturday afternoon, while I was showing a student how to keep the clay centered on the wheel, the phone in my apron pocket buzzed like an unexpected crack on the smooth surface of porcelain. I thought it was Ethan, my husband of 15 years. Maybe asking about tonight's class, or reminding me to pick something up for dinner like the usual texts he sent. I excused myself from the student, stepped into the corner of the studio, where soft light embraced the porcelain shelves, and unlocked the screen. A bank notification popped up, making my heart stop like a kiln, suddenly extinguished in the middle of a crucial firing. Ethan had just transferred $20,000 from our joint account to an unknown one, without a single word of explanation. Attached was an email from him, its tone cold and sharp, like a blade slicing through soft clay. Lila, I'm tired of this mediocre life with you. I've invested our joint money into Clara's startup. My new girlfriend, a driven 24-year-old who's a million times better than you, someone who truly understands the modern world. And big dreams? Your pottery studio. I've told everyone you're not competent enough to run it, so don't be surprised when the customers leave. Don't try to contact me. Clara and I are starting over in Seattle where we belong. His words weren't just cruel. They flaunted arrogance, as if he deliberately stomped on my pride, my career and the dreams I had sweated to build like a saboteur, smashing a porcelain vase, just to prove he could. Every word was a crack in a perfect piece, destroying not only 15 years of marriage, but also targeting the effort and reputation I had built. But I didn't let myself collapse, just like when a batch of porcelain fails. But I still find a way to refire it. I took a deep breath, inhaled the gentle scent of clay, and smiled at the student, my voice still warm, as if nothing had happened. Like an artist maintaining composure in the face of a challenge. Only a tight squeeze of my hand, beneath the wheel, revealed the storm of emotions raging inside me. When the class ended, I locked the studio and walked to the nearby beach, where waves gently lapped the rocks, as if whispering comfort. I reread the email, the pain seeping in, but it wasn't surprising, like spotting a tiny crack on a vase. Before firing, I had sensed Ethan's change long ago. Just never expected he would choose such a vicious way to betray me. I typed my reply tone, cold and unwavering. Goodbye, Ethan. I wish you what you want, and I hope you're ready for what's coming. I am Lila, just betrayed by the man I loved, with a devastating blow like a porcelain batch ruined right before completion. He's probably grinning smugly somewhere, thinking I'll fall apart, shattered from being abandoned. But I stood on the shoreline, the fiery sunset wrapping around me, and my mind had already drawn up a sharp plan, like when I sketch a new porcelain design from a lump of rough clay. The signs had been there for months, quietly, like tiny cracks on unglazed clay, like details I tried to ignore when checking a batch of ceramics. Ethan started coming home late, using investor meetings at his advertising company as an excuse. But the money he brought home never matched his flimsy explanations, like a glaze formula that didn't meet the standard. He changed his phone password, building an invisible wall between us, like when I realize a vase is beyond saving. Then he changed the way he talked, using trendy slang, trying to seem youthful at 42, as if he was running from himself like a customer awkwardly trying to imitate a style that doesn't suit them. I felt the growing distance, but I didn't want to believe it was a sign of betrayal, like hoping a crack in a ceramic piece wouldn't spread. Until 6 months ago, when I accidentally found a receipt in his coat pocket, like a mistake in a pottery sketch. An expensive dinner at a restaurant in Portland on the very day he said he was working late at the office without a single mention of me, like a mismatched detail in a design. That night, I sat alone in the studio, looking at the porcelain vase I made for our wedding, glimmering under the dim light, like a once perfect creation, now showing its flaws. It used to symbolize eternal love, now just a lifeless object, cold like a forgotten dream. Tears fell not out of anger, but from a deep sadness, like realizing a batch of ceramics had failed, sadness because the man I once loved, once trusted, had become a stranger, like a customer rejecting a heartfelt design. But I didn't let myself drown in sorrow for too long, like when I learned to refire a failed batch. I wiped away the tears and whispered to myself, "I'm stronger than this. I won't let him destroy me, or this studio." The next morning, I opened a separate bank account, like preparing a new batch of clay for an important project. Every dollar saved from the studio, all the effort I had poured in over the years, was transferred safely, as carefully as balancing clay, to shape the perfect vase. When Ethan suggested merging our accounts for easier management, I nodded, smiling innocently, like I suspected nothing like an artisan hiding their intention before finalizing the piece. But inside, I had calculated everything, like checking each detail before firing. I left only a small amount in the joint account, just enough for 3 months of normal expenses. Nothing more, like a small batch for testing. It was enough to avoid raising his suspicions, but not enough to drag me down if he pulled a stunt. More than that, I started building a file, documenting all his shady behavior. The expensive dinners I wasn't invited to, business trips with no receipts. The rumors he spread, claiming I was too dreamy to run the studio, like detailed notes in a glaze recipe notebook. I knew that one day they would become sharp weapons like a kiln, ready to turn clay into a masterpiece. That afternoon, while I was firing a new batch of pottery, the flickering flame of the kiln burned like the fire of determination in my heart. My phone vibrated again, like another crack appearing on the surface of my life. Another email from Ethan, his tone increasingly condescending, like a customer who believes they can control the artisan. "Lila, stop wasting time begging me to stay. Clara and I are leaving tomorrow morning to start a business venture. You'll never understand a world of young people, big ideas. A place where there's no room for outdated dreams, like your pottery studio. That studio will soon collapse when people realize you're not competent, and I made sure of it by speaking to your suppliers. Clara, I knew her like when I spot a mismatch in a design, a new intern at his company. A young woman with a bright smile and confident eyes, like a fresh batch of porcelain that hasn't yet been through the fire. I met her once at a promotional event, saw her laughing loudly at Ethan's dull jokes, touching his arm when she thought no one was watching, like a customer trying too hard to impress. She was young enough to be his daughter, and naive enough to think she was the center of his world, a man running from his own age, like a flashy design lacking depth. I didn't reply to the email, just like I don't respond to a critique that doesn't deserve attention. Instead, I called my lawyer Nora, whom I had secretly consulted 4 months ago after discovering a large expense for a startup workshop that Ethan told me I didn't need to know about, like a shady clause in a contract. "It's time to act," I said, my voice calm even though my heart pounded as if it might burst, like when I'm about to fire an important porcelain batch. "The divorce papers are ready," she replied immediately, her voice full of confidence, like a reliable partner. "I'll file them tomorrow morning." "Do you want me to send them straight to him in Seattle for dramatic effect? Or would you prefer he finds out when everything crashes down around him?" I chuckled softly over the phone, feeling like I had just reclaimed myself, like when a batch comes out of the kiln perfectly. "Not yet, Nora. Let him revel in his imaginary victory a little longer, like a customer who thinks they've won a negotiation. Less than an hour later, another email from Ethan slid across the screen. His arrogant tone so over the top, it made me shake my head, like when I see a gaudy design that lacks durability. Lila, I know you're heartbroken about losing me. You're 40 now. What do you have left? Besides that tiny pottery studio, no one really cares about. Lucky for you, I'm not cruel enough to let you starve. But don't expect me to come back. Clara is everything you'll never be: young, smart, and someone who knows how to live in the modern world. I almost laughed, but not from amusement, like when I see a customer who completely misjudges the value of a piece. A tiny pottery studio. The work I built from the days when I had only one old kiln from sleepless nights, experimenting with new glazes from early mornings, opening the studio when there were barely any customers. That studio is now the pride of the city, generating revenue far beyond his middle management salary, like a masterpiece recognized by the entire community. And I had always kept the profits separate, never mixing a single cent with our joint finances, like an artisan guarding the formula of a precious glaze. I thought of the legal papers waiting for Ethan in Seattle. A perfect trap he never saw coming, like a porcelain batch, fired with absolute precision. That evening, I returned to my home, where the warm lights embraced me like an old friend, like the glow of the kiln on long nights. This house left to me by my mother had always been under my name, even though Ethan had tried many times to get his name added to the deed, like a customer trying to insert themselves into a project that wasn't theirs. I silently thanked my mother, who taught me always to have a safe place to stand firm, no matter what happens, like a solid clay base for every creation. While organizing documents for my lawyer, I accidentally opened our wedding album like flipping through an old sketchbook. Ethan in the photo smiled brightly, his eyes full of promises. Now he's a different man, trying to blend in with the young staff at his company, using slang that sounds awkward for his age, like an outdated design trying to mimic a trend. I closed my eyes, letting the sadness pass, like letting a porcelain batch cool down. Not because I lost him, but because I lost the dream of a lasting marriage. But when I opened my eyes, I saw clearly, I'm not just a betrayed wife. I'm Lila, the woman who built a pottery studio a life, and I will protect it at all costs, like an artisan guarding her masterpiece. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop with emails from Ethan, each one more boastful like flashy designs, with no durability. I've been planning this for a while. Lila Clara gives me a life you'll never understand, a world of young people and bold ideas, a place with no room for outdated dreams like yours. You'll be fine. Find someone older to settle down with and don't make a big deal out of this. My family knows and they agree that we should part ways. Don't blame anyone. This is best for both of us. I took screenshots of every email, adding them to my thick folder of evidence, like documenting a new glaze formula. Every word he wrote was a shovel, digging his own hole deeper, like a mistake in the firing process. My lawyer would be pleased with these, especially his smugness about using our shared funds and belittling me like the flaws that doom a design. The last email made me pause, not because it hurt, but because of the opportunity it presented, like discovering a breakthrough glaze formula. By the way, I used our joint credit card to book flights and a month of office rent for Clara's project. Consider it my farewell gift to you. Thanks for sponsoring us, and don't bother looking for me in Seattle. I smiled a cold, sharp smile, like knowing a batch will come out perfectly. This wasn't his mistake. This was the door. I had been waiting for an opening to perfect my creation. I immediately called the credit card company, my voice calm but firm, like when I negotiate with suppliers. This is Lila. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel the card immediately. The agent asked me to confirm which charges. 2 plane tickets to Seattle booked today, and 1 month of office rent at Pioneer Square. Also, please remove my husband from the list of authorized users. I replied like an artisan, giving precise instructions. When they asked for proof, I said, I have emails from him admitting he used our joint card to fund a project with his girlfriend after transferring our shared money. I'll send them right away. The agent's voice carried a hint of approval as they confirmed the charges would be reversed, like a colleague supporting my plan. I imagined Ethan and Clara arriving at the airport the next day, only to be met with locked gates, their Seattle dream vanishing in an instant, like a porcelain batch shattering just before completion. But Ethan didn't stop. Another email came right after, as if he still needed to assert control. Lila, don't worry about the house. I'm kind enough to let you stay for a few months, but you should start looking for something smaller, more suited to your single life, because you won't be able to keep it forever. I burst out laughing, the sound echoing in the quiet studio like when I spot a customer's ridiculous mistake. He truly thought he had any claim to the house my mother left me. A house in my name long before we married, like a creation protected from interference. His arrogance forgot that I never neglect important details, like an artisan checking every crack before firing. He wasn't done yet. Another message followed his tone, growing more delusional. Your pottery studio is all you have, so I'll be generous and let you keep most of it. But don't forget, I helped bring it to where it is now. We'll split my share fairly in the divorce. His share. In the work I built from scratch, with only one old kiln from sleepless nights, testing glazes from early mornings opening when no one showed up. The business he once mocked as a wasteful hobby. Told me I should quit to focus on being a wife. I poured myself a cup of the finest tea I saved for special moments, taking a slow sip like enjoying the kiln's glow when a batch comes out just right. This moment deserved it. Tomorrow, Ethan would face the truth about asset laws and personal property, about the mistakes he never saw coming, like a porcelain piece ruined by impatience. But tonight, I sat in my home, the soft light wrapping around me, like a reminder that I still stood strong, like a ceramic piece that endures through time. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and felt rare peace, like when I complete a perfect vase. The next day, when I opened the ceramic studio, my heart still felt heavy, but my determination was sharper than ever, like the fire of the kiln, ready for a new batch of porcelain. I thought everything would be okay, that I could focus on work, to forget the pain like when I shape clay to soothe my soul. But a call from my biggest clay supplier made my heart sink like a cracked porcelain piece, right before it's finished. Lila, we heard your studio is having financial trouble, he said, his voice hesitant like a client turning down a deal. We can't deliver until you pay in full up front. I was stunned, like discovering a major flaw in a glaze recipe. My studio had never missed a payment, and finances were always tightly managed, like a well-checked design. I asked more questions, and he revealed that a reliable source had warned him I was unfit to run the business, like a slander meant to destroy my work. I knew immediately it was Ethan, like realizing who ruined a batch of porcelain. He hadn't just transferred money and left. He had tried to sabotage the studio he once called insignificant, though clearly important enough for him to target like a jealous saboteur, envious of someone else's masterpiece. I sat in the small office behind the studio, staring at stacks of invoices and ledgers, feeling like the ground was shaking beneath me like a kiln malfunction. This studio was my dream, the place that brought me joy through my hardest days, like a creation that gives life meaning. If I lost it, I didn't know what would be left of me. Doubt crept in. Did I have the strength to fight? Was I even worth fighting for? But then Mia, the young apprentice, knocked on the door, holding a newly shaped porcelain cup, like a small light in the dark. Miss Lila, I made this for you. Take a look. I think it'll be beautiful once it's fired. Her innocent smile pulled me from the darkness like a new idea saving a failed batch. I held the cup, feeling its soft curves, and remembered why I started, not for Ethan, not for anyone, but because I wanted to bring beauty to others, like an artist who finds meaning in every creation. I wiped my tears, stood up, and called the supplier back. My voice firm, like when I negotiate with clients. "Mr. Ben, I will pay up front if I must, but I assure you the studio is not in trouble. I'll send you contracts with major clients as proof, and I hope you'll reconsider the damaging rumors." He agreed, and I knew I had just overcome another challenge, like a perfect batch coming out of the kiln after so many obstacles. But Ethan didn't stop like a saboteur who refuses to quit. I discovered he had spread rumors around town, saying my studio was about to close that I couldn't manage after being left by my husband, like slander meant to dim the light of my work. A major customer, a local furniture store, canceled a large dinnerware order, saying they'd heard the studio wasn't reliable, like a contract pulled at the last minute. I felt suffocated, but I didn't give up, like trying to save a batch that seemed destined to fail. I called Rachel, a close friend from college, who's now an editor at the local arts magazine, like seeking an ally for a big project. "Rachel, I need your help," I said, my voice resolute like an artist preparing for an important exhibition. "Ethan is trying to destroy my studio with toxic rumors. I want the truth told so people know this studio is my heart and soul." Rachel agreed immediately, and we planned an article about the studio's journey, highlighting resilience and quality, subtly suggesting the rumors were a misunderstanding, like a strategy to defend my work. The article ran 3 days later with a photo of me in the studio holding a porcelain vase, smiling with confidence like an artist ready to face any challenge. Customers came back more than ever, and that furniture store called, apologizing for believing the rumors, like a contract re-signed after doubts. Rachel didn't stop with the article. Like an ally who never quits, she introduced me to Leo, a private investigator who had worked with her on corporate cases like a trusted partner. "Lila, if Ethan's playing dirty, he may have left a trail." Leo said, his eyes sharp, like someone inspecting every detail of a porcelain piece. "Give me a few days, I'll dig into him and the other woman." I agreed, though I worried about the cost, like when I invest in a new kiln. But I knew this was an investment to protect my dream, like an artist willing to pay the price to complete a masterpiece. While I waited, I focused on the studio launching a new line of ocean-inspired vases with blue glaze that amazed customers, like a collection bringing in a fresh light. Every vase sold was a statement that Ethan couldn't break me, like a glowing porcelain batch. After the fire, Leo's report came in after 5 days, and it was like a bomb shattering all my assumptions, like discovering a glaze formula that changes the entire design. Ethan hadn't just had an affair with Clara, like a small crack on the surface. He also had a shady past I had never known about in 15 years of marriage, like a secret hidden in the clay. Before he met me, Ethan had been sued for financial fraud at a small advertising firm, where he worked like an unforgivable flaw in a porcelain batch. He had embezzled client funds, but escaped charges thanks to a skilled lawyer his family hired, and a quiet settlement like a crack that had been covered up. His current company had no idea, since he changed his resume, like a redesigned piece meant to deceive Leo, found out Ethan was repeating old tricks using company funds to pay for Clara's startup, labeling them research expenses without valid invoices like a fake glaze formula. If discovered, he would lose his job and face criminal charges like a porcelain piece ruined by error. But the biggest twist was about Clara, like finding a detail that changes the whole meaning of a creation. She wasn't just a naive intern. Like I had believed, Leo found emails between her and a former colleague, in which she bragged about seducing the boss to fund her project like a premeditated plan. She had targeted Ethan from the start, not out of love, but because she believed he could get her into the startup world, like a customer using the artist for gain. She even planned for Ethan to leave his company and start a business with her in Seattle, using our joint account and company loans he intended to take out in the company's name. Like an ambitious design without a foundation. But Clara didn't know Ethan had already burned through most of the money on risky investments for her project, from tech equipment to a fancy office like an overfunded batch with no durability. What shocked me even more was that Clara had contacted my mother before she passed, pretending to be a charity worker, to solicit donations for a fake organization like a saboteur, targeting a precious piece. Thankfully, my mother declined, but the fact that Clara went after my family made my blood boil, like discovering someone deliberately ruined a batch. I thought about my mother, who always taught me to protect what matters. And I told myself Ethan and Clara will pay not just for me, but for everyone they've ever exploited, like artworks destroyed by selfishness. I shared the report with Nora, and she practically jumped with excitement, like a colleague discovering the perfect solution. Lila, this isn't just a divorce anymore. If we submit this evidence to Ethan's company and the IRS, he'll face criminal investigation. And Clara, she could lose her job, or worse, if caught in fraud. I nodded. But deep down I felt a pain mixed with resolve. Like facing a tough batch, I didn't just want what was mine. I wanted them to pay for their arrogance, for thinking I was weak, like an artist defending her masterpiece from destroyers. I decided to defeat Ethan on the biggest stage possible, the city's annual art exhibition, where investors, artists, and major clients of the ceramic studio would be present, like a conference where I would present my most important work. I contacted Rachel, who had connections with the event organizers, the way I would seek a partner for a major project. Rachel, I need an invitation to the exhibition, I said, my voice firm, like an artisan preparing for a debut. And I need a moment to speak to reveal the truth in front of everyone. Rachel hesitated, but when I told her about Leo's report, she agreed. Lila, I'll take care of it. Do what you need to do, but be careful because this will be a big stage. I prepared meticulously, choosing an elegant blue dress, not to show off, but to affirm that I hadn't fallen, like a finely crafted porcelain vase meant to shine. I brought with me a USB drive containing evidence, Ethan's emails, Leo's report, Clara's emails, and a recording Leo had obtained in which Ethan bragged to a friend that he had fooled Lila effortlessly, like a set of documents for a major exhibition. I also brought a special gift, a large porcelain vase, exquisitely decorated with a small inscription hidden inside. Justice endures longer than porcelain, like a piece carrying a powerful message. The exhibition took place in a luxurious hall, with glittering lights and gentle music, like the perfect stage for a masterpiece. Ethan walked in hand with Clara, him in a suit, trying to look youthful, her in a sparkling short dress, both wearing smug smiles like speakers who thought they were the center of the event. I stood in the corner of the room, observing, my heart pounding, but my mind clear, like when I was preparing to launch a new porcelain line. When Ethan took the stage to present Clara's startup project and began talking about his creative spirit, I knew my moment had come, like when a piece is ready to be unveiled. I raised my hand, my voice ringing out clearly, cutting into the speech I would like to share. A different perspective on Ethan's spirit, if no one minds to shed light on the truth behind this project. Ethan turned pale, but the exhibition director, who had been informed by Rachel, nodded like a partner backing my plan. I stepped onto the stage, all eyes on me, like when an artisan presents their masterpiece. I didn't tremble like when I know my batch of porcelain is perfect. I plugged the USB into the projector, and the large screen displayed Ethan's email with an insulting line. Her ceramic studio will collapse soon enough when people realize she's not capable. I played the recording of him, his voice gleeful. Lila has no clue. I moved the joint funds and planned this for a year. I presented Clara's email, in which she called Ethan her golden ticket to a startup. The gallery fell silent. Then whispers spread like waves hitting the shore. After a shocking reveal, I looked directly at Ethan, my voice calm but sharp. You want to tell your success story, Ethan? Here's the truth. You transferred $20,000 from our joint account, used the company card to fund Clara, and tried to sabotage my ceramic studio with rumors. But today your game ends, not because I want revenge, but because truth endures longer than lies. I turned to Clara. And you? Clara thought you were clever for using him. You didn't know he spent all the money on you, only for both of you to end up in debt. Like a failed porcelain batch. Due to impatience, I ended by opening the porcelain vase, revealing the words, "Justice endures longer than porcelain." This is my gift to the community, because you deserve to know the truth about this so-called creator. Ethan tried to walk away, but Leo, standing at the door with security, stopped him, like a precisely executed plan. Clara burst into tears, but no one felt sympathy like when a counterfeit design is exposed. The gallery erupted in applause, not because I won, but because the truth had been revealed, like when a masterpiece is recognized by the world. After leaving the exhibition, I drove to the beach, where Ethan and I used to walk in the early days of our love. Like when I sought inspiration from the early days of shaping clay, I let the tears fall, not because I lost him, but because I lost myself in the blind trust of those years. Like realizing a porcelain batch failed due to my own mistakes. I thought about my mother, who taught me to shape clay since I was a child, who always said, "A beautiful vase heals the heart." Like a timeless lesson, I whispered to her, "Mom, I'm finding my heart again. I won't give up, just like you never gave up." The next day, the ceramics studio was busier than ever. Like an exhibition after a successful launch, customers came not only to buy ceramics, but to tell me they were proud of me, like art lovers cherishing an authentic piece. But there were moments I stood alone in the office, looking at the photo my mother left, her smiling brightly beside the kiln, like an endless source of inspiration. I wondered if I had disappointed her by letting my marriage fall apart, like when I doubted one of my porcelain batches. The doubt returned, but I opened my mother's old glaze recipe notebook and saw her handwritten line, "Porcelain endures because of love, not pain." I wiped my tears and started shaping a new batch of vases, the way my mother would, like an artisan, finding light again through clay. The hearing came like a meticulously staged performance, like a carefully prepared art debut. Ethan appeared in youthful clothes, tight skinny pants and a trendy jacket, but his eyes revealed panic, like a client realizing they had lost the negotiation. Clara stood in the hallway looking smaller under the courthouse's cold lights, no longer exuding the confidence she had on social media, like a design that had lost its shine. Nora presented the evidence with the precision of an artist. Ethan's gloating emails about transferring money, fraudulent credit card charges, a secret spending history. I had quietly recorded for 18 months, like a flawless glaze recipe notebook. She even brought up Clara's social media post where she casually flaunted the startup and called me a jealous woman, like a detail that illuminated the entire piece. Ethan's lawyer hired hastily tried to argue with a trembling voice. "Your Honor, my client admits he made some poor decisions, but Mrs. Lila acted vindictively by exposing private emails to ruin his life." Nora smiled, her voice sharp as a blade. "Like when I cut clay with perfect precision. Vindictively. You mean wisely." My client protected her own assets and documented every wrongful act of her husband. That is not revenge. That is justice, like a piece perfected through patience. The judge reviewed my documents. The deed showing the house was in my name before the marriage. The business license under my name for the studio and the financial separation. Ethan once mocked as unnecessary paranoia, like the small details that complete a masterpiece. Mr. Ethan, the judge, looked straight at him, voice stern like a juror at an exhibition. "You admitted via email that you transferred joint funds and used a joint credit card for a personal project with someone else. Do you deny this evidence, or do you still claim innocence?" Ethan fidgeted, sweat beading on his forehead, like a client realizing their deal had fallen apart. I just wanted a clear break," he mumbled, his voice faltering. The judge raised an eyebrow. "By committing financial fraud, and now you demand ownership of assets, clearly belonging to someone else, as if Mrs. Lila has no right to protect her own work." Ethan's lawyer tried again, voice desperate. The studio grew during the marriage. Your Honor, my client is entitled to a share. But Nora cut in, her voice slicing through like when I complete a porcelain vase. The studio was founded before the marriage, and Mrs. Lila kept all business and personal finances completely separate. We have documents proving every investment, every profit, and not a single cent involved. Mr. Ethan. I looked at Ethan as the truth began to sink in, like when kiln light reveals the cracks in a low-quality porcelain batch. He thought it would be easy. Move the money, run away with the young woman, take half the studio in the divorce, and live comfortably. He never understood why I kept my assets separate, once laughing at my books as needless paranoia, like a client who fails to see the value of meticulousness. The court ordered all joint assets frozen until the final ruling. Ethan was ordered to repay the $20,000 within 24 hours. But the money's gone. He cried out, his voice breaking like shattered porcelain. We spent it all on the project The Office. The judge cut him off, voice cold as stone, like when I reject an unworthy design. Then find a way to replace it, Mr. Ethan. And this court does not look kindly on using joint funds for extramarital ventures. As I left the courthouse, I heard Clara ask Ethan, her voice trembling, "What do we do now? You said everything was handled." Ethan didn't answer, just lowered his head, looking like a man who had lost everything, like a creation destroyed by arrogance. The sound of my heels echoed confidently on the marble floor, each step a statement that I had triumphed like an artisan completing her masterpiece. A few weeks later, Ethan grew increasingly desperate, like a client trying to salvage a failed deal. He emailed Nora, claiming the pottery studio was his idea, that he had invested time and effort to make it succeed, as an accusation to steal my work. He even tried to spread rumors around town that I had stolen his achievements like a saboteur, unwilling to admit defeat. But my meticulous records, from the first lease agreement to every clay invoice, refuted all the lies like an error-free porcelain glaze recipe book. He's panicking, Nora said on the phone, her voice barely hiding a hint of amusement, like a colleague enjoying a win. Clara's social media shows, they're crammed into her tiny apartment. Turns out living off an intern's salary isn't the dream he imagined. Ethan's family began to reach out, their tone completely different from the early days, like customers who changed their attitude after seeing the truth. His sister Sarah sent a long apologetic text. "We were wrong to believe Ethan Lila. He said you were controlling, that he needed to get away from you, to be true to himself. But after seeing the emails he sent, the way he bragged about moving money and insulting you, I'm ashamed I ever took his side. You're stronger than we thought, and I hope you'll forgive our blindness." Ethan's mother, Mrs. Ellen, called once. Her voice choked. "What he said about your abilities, about replacing you with a younger woman. I thought I raised him better than that. I'm sorry, Lila, for not seeing the truth sooner, and for not recognizing your strength." I listened but didn't respond much, like when I stay silent in front of unnecessary compliments. Their support came too late, like guests arriving after the exhibit had closed. My pottery studio, in contrast, kept thriving like a work recognized by the world. Rumors of my story spread far, and women in town began to drop by, not just to buy porcelain, but to share like art lovers, visiting a sincere artisan. They told stories of betrayal, of silent victories they achieved, like tales of porcelain batches rescued from the kiln's fire. My ex-husband also thought he could take it all, a customer, Mrs. Grace said while choosing a vase. But seeing you, Lila, I learned that we must be prepared stronger than they think, like how you turned this pottery studio into a masterpiece. From the days I fought to protect my own dream, I realized I could help others find their light again, like an artist inspiring through every creation. I founded a small support group at the Pottery Studio where women could share and learn to protect their assets and emotions, like a space designed for healing. The group quickly grew, becoming a strong community, like a porcelain collection that grows richer. One evening, as the group gathered, I shared about my darkest days. The moment I stood in the studio reading Ethan's cruel email, like facing a failed porcelain batch. But I learned that pain is not the end. It's where you find the strength to begin again, like reshaping rough clay. One member, Sophie, said she had escaped a toxic relationship after hearing my story. "You made me believe I deserve better. Lila, like how you turned cracks into masterpieces." The support group gradually became a nonprofit organization with workshops on finance and confidence, like a brand expanding its reach. I invited a psychologist and a lawyer to share their knowledge, but it wasn't always smooth, like when a porcelain batch struggles in the kiln. Once a member doubted my leadership, saying I was too busy with the studio, like a client criticizing a design. The criticism made me hesitate, but I organized a charity exhibition for a women's shelter, and its success proved I could do it like a porcelain batch shining after many trials. 2 years after that cruel email, I was invited to speak at a conference for female artists in front of hundreds of women, with hopeful eyes like a major exhibit, where I shared my vision. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal, but how to build and protect an artistic career, like a lesson on firing porcelain through flames. During the Q&A session, a young woman raised her hand, her voice trembling. "My husband says I'm paranoid for wanting to keep a separate account. He says marriage is about sharing everything that I don't trust him." I smiled, my voice warm but firm. Like when I guide a student, my ex-husband said the same until he moved our shared money and demanded half the studio in the divorce. Trust your instincts. Protecting isn't paranoia. It's loving yourself like how you care for a porcelain vase. The conference ended with a thunderous applause, like when a masterpiece is recognized. But the moment I remember most was when Mia, the student who once came to the studio, stepped up. "Lila, thanks to you, I opened my own pottery studio. You gave me the courage to believe I could do it like an artist, inspiring me to reshape my life." I hugged her, feeling my heart warm, like when a batch comes out of the kiln perfectly. My pottery studio now has 6 branches, each one busier than the last, with 50 employees, and a brand featured in national magazines like a porcelain collection, spreading across the world. But I still remember the hard days, when I wondered if I had the strength to go on, when the stress of managing everything kept me up at night, like nights spent testing new glazes. Those moments remind me that success isn't perfection. It's standing up every day and moving forward like an artist who never stops shaping clay. Through mutual friends, I learned that Ethan moved out of his parents' house, rented a tiny apartment above a garage with meager pay from a temp job like a forgotten piece of work. His old company had fired him after a scandal involving misuse of funds, and his startup resume still said young at heart. But no one invested like a design no one cared about. Clara is now a regular at the first branch. She earned a business degree, started a small but promising event planning company. "You inspired me, Lila," she said once while buying a vase. "You showed me that women can build something lasting without chasing empty promises." I keep Ethan's cruel email in a small frame in my office, not to remember the pain, but to remind me how far I've come, like an old but precious glaze formula. Below it is a plaque engraved with the words, "Success is the perfect answer." At the 7-year anniversary of the first studio, I stood before employees, customers, and the whole town sharing my story, like an exhibition honoring my journey. From a small studio mocked by my ex-husband, it had become the heart of a radiant brand, a symbol of resilience, like a masterpiece fired through flames. Ethan's mother showed up, though I hadn't invited her like a surprise guest at an exhibit. As the crowd thinned, she stepped forward, her eyes red. "I saw Ethan last week. He still talks about the glory days, about the project he should have had. He doesn't understand. He didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away himself, out of arrogance, out of selfishness." I nodded, said nothing, but inside I felt at peace, like when a batch comes out perfect, without any adjustments. I thought of that email of Ethan's careless cruelty, of how he hoped I'd collapse, fall apart. But I didn't collapse. I built like an artist, turning clay into a masterpiece. Each pottery branch is proof that women can achieve anything when they believe in themselves, like porcelain creations that endure through time. Life, I realized, is like a porcelain vase. It is formed through meticulous days, through the kiln's fire, and even through cracks, like a journey full of challenges, yet full of meaning. There are moments when you feel like you have everything, and there are days when you think you have lost it all. Like when I stood in the studio reading Ethan's cruel words. But I learned that the darkest days are also where you find the light, if you dare to stand up and reshape like an artisan who never stops creating. I want to speak to anyone hearing this story, or going through similar pain. Life will test you sometimes, in the harshest ways. There will be people who hurt you, dreams that break days, when you question if you are strong enough. But believe me, you are stronger than you think. Do not let the pain define you. Let it teach you how to love yourself, how to build a better life, not for anyone else, but for yourself, like an artisan turning clay into a masterpiece. Live with positivity. Keep growing and find joy in the little things. A morning cup of tea, a stranger's smile, or a dream you are inching closer to. Life does not promise to be easy, but it promises that you can make it beautiful if you choose to move forward with an open heart, like a porcelain vase shining after the kiln's fire.